live. It's live YouTube. And Periscope is live. Twitter is live.
Good day, I am Margaret Mabaleng, and joining me here today is Ms. Phumla Williams, the Acting Director General of GCIS. We'll be unpacking the statement released by Cabinet regarding the issues that were discussed. Ms. Williams, good day.
Good day, Margaret, and good day to the viewers.
Ms. Williams, can you quickly please take us through the statement released by Cabinet in terms of the issues that were discussed?
Thank you very much. I think the Cabinet has dealt with quite a number of issues. I will try and highlight the key ones, starting with just the appreciation of the budget speech. I think the Cabinet has welcomed the budget speech as it was presented by the Minister of Finance. And I think what was pleasing, as Cabinet has reflected, is that the budget that was presented is a reflection of the commitments that the president has put in place to say these are the issues that we will be taking going forward. But I think also it's a budget speech that is measured, that is appreciating the challenges that we have in terms of our economy. It does talk to how we are going to navigate in terms of the wage bill as faced by the public service. It is making proposal, and I think the Cabinet has appreciated that and also committed to work towards making the current budget respond to some of the commitments that the president has made. So that's one thing. But I think also, if I can mention the fact that you will recall that the president 2 weeks ago did make an announcement that there will be the special cabinet committee that is headed by the deputy president, supported by a couple of ministers, Minister of Energy, Transport, State Security, and Public Enterprise, with the view of making sure that they work with ESCOM and also keep the president on board. In this past cabinet, the minister, together with the deputy president, provided a report. But one of the things that I would like to highlight in the report that was presented to cabinet was the consultation that has taken place with Labour. There is an appreciation by government that dealing with the issues of ESCOM cannot be the problem that is only dealt with by government. There has been an extensive discussions that took place with this committee together with the Labour, with a view of making the Labour appreciate the challenges that we have in as far as the energy generation, the distribution, and the operational issues that are facing the ESCOM. And I think one of the useful thing that came out from this discussion is that going forward, how do they formalize this regular consultation? Because I think moving forward, we do appreciate that as government, we're going to make sure that there is constant consultation, because the solutions of ESCOM can be the solutions that are found by everybody else. That is why, additionally, in the report that was presented to Cabinet was the meeting that was held by this team together with the coal industry under the Mineral Association. There was also a discussion with this team in terms of the costs, price of the coal industry in general, but also the quality of coal that is provided to ESCOM. There was that kind of deliberation and discussion with this sector, with a view also of saying, how do we move forward? Because there is an appreciation that ESCOM still has to use the coal. And lastly, the one category that was engaged, I think the minister reported that they were having a discussion with the engineering sector from the various disciplines that are taking place. And also the view was to say, this is how they view the challenges of ESCOM, and also overall, what has come out from the report that was presented is that there was commitment from the coal industry and the engineering industry to work with government in identifying people that can form the basis of this technical team that is going to help us moving forward. So that was a report that was presented to Cabinet in this last Cabinet. But there's quite a number of other issues that were appreciated by Cabinet. If I can then just maybe highlight a few that were current. I think there's also a welcoming of the special economic zones, that one of the economic zones that has been opened in Saldanha Bay with an investment of plus minus 3 billion rand. I think what is also exciting and also to share with South Africans is that whilst we are saying we want to grow our economy, we are live at saying how do we make sure that the economy move to the outlying area. And this particular Saldanha Bay economic zone is beginning to say how do we invest and grow our economy in the marine sector, but also making sure that we create job in that sector. So the Cabinet has appreciated, and it's one of the many special economic zones that have been open across the country. So that's one of the things that they've also reflected on.
Ms. Phumla Williams, with the unbundling of ESCOM, for a person sitting at home who does not understand what does it mean, can you please take us through it? What do you mean when government says we are unbundling ESCOM?
You know, ESCOM as it stands now, it's one entity that does the generating of electricity. It is also involved in the transmission of electricity to houses, and it's also dealing with the operational issues of ESCOM. So what the approach is in trying to deal with the issues of ESCOM is that the ESCOM as it stands now, it's too big.
Yes, ma'am.
It has to be unbundled with a view of let's deal with small pockets of the ESCOM. How do we deal with the generation of the electricity as an entity on its own? How do we make sure that we make that particular component effective, and how do we deal with the distribution? And remember, distribution also involves municipalities, because distribution is not only just ESCOM, but it's ESCOM, but also the municipalities are involved. So those are pockets of all the entities. But I think one of the things that we want to emphasize is that at this stage, we're not talking about privatizing all of them, but we are saying, how do we unbundle it in order to make it easier to manage and to zoom in on problem areas with the objective of strengthening the various aspects of it. At this stage, government is consistently saying we are not privatizing, but we are making ESCOM a bit manageable.
Okay, ma'am. And there seems to be a global push for a greener economy. Ma'am, what would you say? Let's visit the special economic zones. Let's touch on that again. What does this mean for communities, this program, in terms of job creation and growing the economy, and in terms of skills? What role is government going to play in skilling people?
I think the special economic zone, the starting point is that we're tapping on economic sectors that have not been tapped to their maximum. I think that's the starting point. You will appreciate that the ocean economy, just as a sector, we've never really exploited enough what can be possible. So that's one area of saying, let us tap into this area. Let us create opportunities in this sector. But the second thing, and as you correctly are pointing out, is how will this special economic zone benefit the communities around that area? One, it will grow the economy of that particular area. But secondly, it will create jobs. It will make it possible for a young person who decided to say, I want to stay in my area. How do I make sure that I stay in my area, but I still want a job? And these special economic zones are going to make it possible that young people do not necessarily see prosperity by moving to the cities. So these special economic zones are actually striving to do that, but also growing our economy.
Okay, ma'am. Ms. Phumla, with the recent violence we've seen in schools, What is your response to what has been happening?
I think the cabinet has really reflected on that and raised the concern about the safety of our children. I think everybody appreciates that the kids are taken to school with a view of learning and not to have to be ducking bullets. So I think the government has raised concerned about the safety, and it has called on the communities, especially the school governing bodies, to say work with us, work with the security and agencies to make sure that we make schools safe for our children. But I think also it has reflected and thanked the police. The recent incident that happened in Edenvale, the fact that there was less violence that erupted as a result of that attack was the speedy response of the South African police. So the cabinet has thanked the police for their speedy intervention, but most importantly, it is appealing to communities together with the special that let us be vigilant and let us make the schools a safe environment for our children.
Yes, my next question was going to be, how do we, as ordinary citizens in society, take part in making sure that schools are a safer place of learning? How do we play a role as citizens?
I think there's a lot that we can do. I think the engagement with the communities around that area, most of these criminals, they live within communities. And if we don't engage as communities, whether in our churches, whether in our civic organization, begin to talk about the damage that they do if violence in an environment of schooling. Kids are not meant to be worrying about safety, that a bullet can come anyhow. But what we are saying is that as communities, we need to engage ourselves on those issues and see how best we make the community to appreciate that it's their job to be vigilant. Somehow, somewhere, somebody must have been aware of some planned attack. And what we are saying is that be part of the solution. You could have alerted the police that there is some planning of an attack in the school. They can actually prevent it before it even happens.
Ma'am, speaking of churches, we've been seeing a lot of media reports about people being raised from the dead and people being sprayed with insecticides, which can be quite harmful to one's health. What is government's response to that?
I think the cabinet has condemned the acts that seem to be taking advantage of people's vulnerability. People go to church for spiritual strengthening and healing emotionally. And what seems to have been happening now is that some of these churches have taken advantage of people's vulnerability, either stocking money out of people's going to church. In other cases, we've had sexual exploitation of people, congregants that go there. And the bottom line, the government is saying, let the law take its course. Those who break the law, they should be arrested. And I think we call on communities to also, again, in this particular case, work with the law enforcement agencies. I don't think we should allow an environment of the churches to be exploited in the manner that it has been happening in the past weeks or months. So I think the government is really beginning to zoom in and engaging and saying, let those who break the law should be arrested.
Okay, ma'am. Now we are going to the situation in Venezuela. We know that currently now they are facing a humanitarian crisis, and given with South Africa's own history, we'd like to know what is government's response to that, and how is government helping in terms of the crisis in Venezuela?
The cabinet has also reflected on that. It has raised a concern about what is currently unfolding in Venezuela, but also commending the intervention, the humanitarian intervention by the United Nations. But I think as government and as cabinet in particular, we should say that cabinet is of the view that a lasting solution in any country is a solution that is derived from the internal dialogue and a consultative process by all the relevant parties. It is the view of cabinet that that is the only way of finding a lasting peace in a country. And in this particular case, it calls on all the internal parties to engage in dialogue in finding their solutions that are derived from internal involvement. They tend to last longer, and that's what the cabinet's position has been on the situation in Venezuela.
Okay, ma'am. And now we are coming back to South Africa. We are going to discuss the Tourism Amendment Bill, which was approved by Cabinet. Um, I'd like to know, Ms. Williams, what does this bill mean for the tourism industry, and how will it affect our industry overall, and in terms of job creation and so forth?
You will appreciate that tourism as a sector is one of the fastest growing industry in our country, and most of importantly, it is a labor intensive. It's one of the leading sectors in creating jobs for our communities. So this bill seeks to begin to address areas that can assist in making this industry to even become much more effective. You will see the bill is out for public comment, and I hope that people will access it and engage with it. It begins to deal with the issue of accommodation. It puts some norms and standards around that area. But importantly, also, it begins to devolve who is supposed to do the grading. I think a lot of people will know that a lot of hotels have got grading. It does define who will be responsible for that. But the most important thing also, it begins to deal with the quality of the tour guides. It does spell out what will be required through the SAQA on standardization of the training of the tour guides. So this piece of a amendment bill is going to go a long way in tightening those areas in terms of training, in terms of the rental stock that is available, but importantly, the training that is provided to the tour guides. It has to be standardized. It shouldn't be a situation where, because I have a car and therefore I want to become a tour guide, there has to be norms and standards. There has to be a quality of how the tour guides there should be a uniformity of what kind of a tour guide you get in Cape Town or a tour guide that you get in KZN. The service should remain the same.
Okay, ma'am. Let's say I am from Soweto and I own a B&B, for instance. How will this bill ensure that people get fair play in the game, and ensure that there is equal opportunity for everybody, and opening up the sector?
Yes, I think what it's trying to do, it's trying to do exactly that. The fact that I have a house,
Yes, ma'am.
there should be minimum standard. It puts in place threshold. It can't be free for all, because at the end of the day, you need to ensure that there's equity. There are hotels that need to run the business. There's also those small houses that also say, I am providing a service. They provide that threshold of saying, this is how we're going to be performing in this environment in terms of rental space, which I think a lot of people are aware. People have turned their houses into rental spaces for tourism. It then begins to regulate even that environment, that at the end of the day, they should complement what is existing at the current moment.
Okay, ma'am. Now we are visiting another bill again, the Central Application Service Bill. Ma'am, for a person, let's say a person who is going for their tertiary education, what does this bill mean for them? Because also applying and getting into universities is becoming a real struggle. So what does this bill, how is it going to help prospective students?
I think for me, this is one of the piece of legislation, a bill that we would want to encourage all young people to get hold of and engage with it. It's still out for public comment, and it would go a long way if young people can begin to consume what we are proposing. You will recall that one of the biggest challenges that young people have has been this registration. That if they want to go and apply in University of Natal and University of Western Cape, they have to apply to pay the registration. This application, this central application system, is going to afford young people to only register once, apply once. And I have to really correct myself very quickly. It's not a tool that you are already registered. It is for you to apply, and it is a central, and you don't have to pay additionally, but the university still reserve the right of deciding whether they accept you or not. But it is going to begin as it grows to deal with the question of applying. You don't have to apply in all the universities. It is also going to pull together some of these faculties that exist in different places. And one of the important things with the central application system, it is going to begin to make tertiary education accessible to everybody. And I know a lot of people will say, if I'm in the rural area, I won't be able to access it because it is internet based. But as we move forward to the Department of Higher Education, once it has been put in place, there will be systems that will be put in place that even if I'm in the deepest of rural area, there have to be facilities in making sure that you are able to access this facility. So this bill, it's out for public comment. I think people must engage with it, particularly the young people. They should engage with it. They should sharpen it. They should improve it.
Yes, ma'am. As we know, the right to information is quite important in society for people to be able to make more informed decisions. The South African Public Library and Information Services Bill, which was also approved by Cabinet, would like to know: does this mean that we will be seeing more libraries even in the rural areas where mostly it is a struggle?
Again, I have to say that this is another one transformational bill that we should all be excited about. We want to, I think the president is on record in saying we want to have a reading nation. But what has happened over the years, I think we need to say that the libraries is one of the competencies that reside in municipalities. But what this bill seeks to do is to say, let's have norms and standards. Let us not have a library in the deepest rural area that is basically not even worth to be called a library because it doesn't have books. So this bill is going to create the norms and standards and make sure that if you are a child in a rural area, you are not disadvantaged because of your proximity. A library has to be in place. But also what is exciting about this bill, it's going to begin to tackle the issues of what the material that is in that library. It must make sure that the people with disabilities are able to consume the material in those languages. The indigenous languages, books, they have to be accessible. It begins to tackle issues of transformation that if you are in a rural area and you need braille, that library should be able to have material that is consumed by people who are using braille. So I think this is what is exciting. But I should also indicate that this bill is not including university libraries or school libraries. It is just general municipality libraries in the communities, and that's what is exciting. The norms and standard, the quality of a library that will be put in place, it all has to provide the same level of quality and the standards that will be provided.
So we'll be seeing, with the craze of the fourth industrial revolution, we would probably be walking into digitized libraries now as well. How is government planning to meet, to move with the times, the fourth industrial revolution, and also still maintain our traditional library? Some people still like to feel how a book still feels like.
You certainly are correct. I think if we're talking about the norms and standard, I think those standards should be alive to the fourth industrial revolution. There won't be. I remember when I was still growing up, there was no such a thing as internet. But I think the library of today, those norms will have to talk to that. That you can't be in a library and not have a Wi-Fi and not be able to sit and do some of your research online. So I think those standards, I think they will become clearer as the bill gets passed. But it will definitely be a modern norms and standard that are alive to the technology that we have today.
And lastly, ma'am, the president has declared the 8th of May as the official day for the general elections. And we are also celebrating 25 years of democracy this year. What would your message be to the public, and are we ready for the elections?
I think the cabinet first and foremost congratulated young people, especially the first-time voters. I think the cabinet has appreciated the fact that young people want to take responsibility of the future of the country. The 8th has definitely been gazetted. I think it did reflect on the 26th. The date was gazetted. And what it then says is that the cabinet says it's all system goes. On the 8th of May, everybody has to go and exercise their democratic right to vote, because this is what is left now. The checking of whether you are registered or not, it's finished, it's done, dusted, but all of us now have to make sure that we go and exercise their right.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.